The heat rose in shimmering waves from the barren earth as Rebecca Anderson stumbled forward, her cracked lips parting in a silent prayer that the next step wouldn't be her last. 3 days lost in the merciless Arizona Territory desert had stripped away her city pretensions along with her strength, leaving nothing but a desperate woman fighting for survival in a land that seemed determined to claim her. It was 1878, and Rebecca had left everything behind in Boston: a shattered engagement, a scandalized family, and the suffocating expectations of society to accept a teaching position in the frontier town of Copper Springs. The stagecoach had been attacked by bandits 2 days into their journey. While the other passengers were robbed and continued on their way, Rebecca had panicked and fled into the desert, becoming hopelessly lost in her terror. Now, as the relentless sun beat down upon her bonnetless head, she cursed her foolishness. Her once fine traveling dress hung in tatters around her slender frame, her boots were splitting at the seams, and the last drops of water had passed her lips hours ago. She squinted at the horizon, trying to make sense of the wavering mirages that taunted her fevered mind. Was that dust in the distance, or just another cruel trick of the desert? Rebecca blinked hard, swaying dangerously as she strained to focus. The distant cloud was approaching, and where there was dust, there might be people. With renewed determination, she forced her leaden legs to move, stumbling toward what she prayed was salvation. As the distance closed, she made out the shape of a rider. Tall in the saddle atop a powerfully built chestnut horse, hope and fear warred within her. Was this a rescuer or another bandit? She had nothing left to steal except her life. "Hello," she tried to call, but her parched throat produced only a raspy whisper. Rebecca waved her arms weakly, then tripped over a rock and fell hard to her knees. The world spun around her in a dizzying whirl of heat and light. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped. Through the curtain of her matted hair, she saw a pair of well-worn boots hit the ground beside her. "Madam, can you hear me?" The voice was deep, touched with concern and a hint of a southern drawl. Rebecca tried to respond, to look up at her potential savior, but her strength had finally failed her. Darkness crept in from the edges of her vision as she felt strong arms catch her before she hit the ground. "I've got you now," the voice said, sounding far away. "You're safe." As consciousness slipped away, Rebecca's last thought was that she'd never believed in angels, especially not ones who wore spurs and smelled of leather and sage. Cole O'Malley had been tracking a stray calf when he spotted the figure staggering across the desert floor. At first, he thought it might be one of the Yavapai from the nearby reservation, but as he drew closer, he realized it was a white woman, and she was clearly in dire straits. He gathered the unconscious woman into his arms, marveling at how light she felt despite her sodden, dusty clothing. Her face, though reddened by sun exposure and smudged with dirt, revealed refined features that told him she was no local. What in blazes was someone like her doing alone in this god-forsaken stretch of desert? Cole lifted her onto his horse before swinging up behind her, cradling her limp form against his chest. His ranch was closer than town, and she needed help immediately. He could feel the heat radiating from her skin, a dangerous sign of severe sun exposure. "Hang on, miss," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "Riverside Ranch isn't far. We'll get you fixed up." As they rode, Cole studied what he could see of the woman's face. She was young, probably in her early 20s, with delicate features that spoke of breeding and refinement. Her hands, though blistered and raw, showed few calluses not a woman accustomed to frontier life. Her dark hair, falling from what had once been an elegant updo, framed a face that even in distress held a quiet dignity. Within 20 minutes, the scrubby landscape gave way to the greener pastures of Riverside Ranch. Cole had worked hard for 5 years to transform this land from a barren outpost to a modest cattle operation. It wasn't the largest spread in the territory, but it was his, earned through sweat and determination after returning from the war with nothing but scars and nightmares. He rode directly to the main house, a solid structure of adobe and timber that he'd built with his own hands. "Miguel!" Cole called as they approached. His foreman emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. The older Mexican man's eyes widened at the sight of the woman in Cole's arms. "Madre de Dios. Who is she?" "Found her wandering in the desert," Cole replied, carefully dismounting while supporting the unconscious woman. "She's in a bad way. Tell Rosa to prepare a bed and bring water." Miguel nodded and hurried toward the small cabin where he lived with his wife. Cole carried the woman into his house, laying her gently on the sofa in the front room. She moaned softly but didn't wake. Rosa appeared moments later, her round face creased with concern. The middle-aged woman had been a godsend since coming to work for Cole 2 years ago, keeping his house and cooking meals that made his bachelor existence considerably more comfortable. "Pobrecita," Rosa murmured, immediately examining the woman. "She is very dehydrated. We must get water into her slowly." While Cole explained how he'd found her, Rosa efficiently dampened a cloth and began dabbing at the woman's cracked lips. "Go prepare your room for her," she instructed. "She will need quiet and rest." Cole hesitated. "My room?" "But," Rosa fixed him with a stern look, "your bed is the most comfortable, and she needs comfort, senor. You will sleep in the bunkhouse." Knowing better than to argue, Cole nodded and went to prepare his bedroom. As he changed the sheets and opened the window to let in fresh air, he wondered about the mysterious woman. What had driven her into the desert alone? Was someone looking for her? By the time he returned to the front room, Rosa had managed to get a few sips of water into the woman, who was stirring weakly. "She wakes a little," Rosa said, "but her mind wanders. She has fever." Together, they carried her to Cole's bedroom and settled her on the bed. Rosa shooed him out, intending to remove the woman's filthy traveling clothes and clean her up. "I will call when it's proper for you to return," she said firmly, closing the door in his face. Cole stood in the hallway, suddenly feeling like an intruder in his own home. With a sigh, he went outside to tend to his horse and ponder the unexpected turn his day had taken. 2 hours later, after Cole had seen to his chores and changed his own dust-covered clothes, Rosa emerged from the bedroom. "She sleeps now," the housekeeper reported. "I've cleaned her and put her in one of my nightdresses. The fever is still high, but she took more water. We will need to watch her through the night." "Did she say anything? Her name? Where she's from?" Rosa shook her head. "Only bits that make no sense. Something about a stagecoach and running from bad men. And a name Boston? Perhaps that is where she is from." Cole nodded thoughtfully. "I'll ride into town tomorrow, see if there's been word of a missing passenger. Dr. Jenkins should come take a look at her too." "Sigh, that's wise." Rosa paused. "She is educated, this one. Her hands are soft, and even in fever, her words are proper." "I noticed," Cole said, thinking of his own calloused hands and the rough speech that came more naturally to him these days than the polished tones of his youth. "She's a long way from home, wherever that is." "You may see her now, but do not wake her," Rosa instructed. "I will prepare supper." Cole entered the bedroom quietly. In the soft light of the oil lamp, the woman looked younger and more vulnerable than she had in the harsh desert sun. Rosa had braided her long dark hair, and without the dirt and sunburn, her skin was fair, though flushed with fever. She was beautiful in a refined way that made him acutely aware of his rough surroundings. He sat in the chair beside the bed, oddly compelled to keep watch over this stranger who had literally fallen into his life. There was something about her face, even in sleep, that spoke of determination, the same quality that had likely kept her alive in the desert when others would have perished. "Who are you?" he whispered. "And what demons were you running from?" The woman stirred slightly, her brow furrowing as if troubled by dreams. Cole resisted the urge to smooth away the worry lines with his thumb. Instead, he leaned back in the chair, settling in for what promised to be a long night. Rebecca floated in and out of consciousness, caught in a haze of fever dreams. Sometimes she was back in Boston, facing her mother's disapproving gaze as she announced her decision to take the teaching position. Other times, she was on the stagecoach again, hearing the shots that heralded the bandits' arrival, feeling the panic that had sent her fleeing into the wilderness. Most often, though, she dreamed of a man with kind eyes the color of a stormy sky, who spoke to her in a gentle voice that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. Was he real, or just another mirage conjured by her desperate mind? Slowly, reality began to seep back in. Rebecca became aware of softness beneath her, cool cloth on her forehead, the distant sounds of a household in motion. She forced her heavy eyelids open, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling above her. "You're awake," said a deep voice from beside the bed. Rebecca turned her head slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her neck. The man from her dreams, from the desert, sat in a chair nearby, watching her with those same storm-gray eyes. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly where it brushed his collar. A thin scar ran along his jawline, standing out white against his tanned face. "Where?" she managed, her voice a painful rasp. "Riverside Ranch," he answered, rising to pour water from a pitcher. "About 15 miles outside of Copper Springs. I'm Cole O'Malley. I found you in the desert 2 days ago." 2 days? Rebecca tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as dizziness washed over her. "Easy now," Cole said, supporting her back with one hand while offering the water with the other. "You've been pretty sick. The doc says you're lucky to be alive." She sipped gratefully, the cool water soothing her raw throat. "Rebecca Anderson," she offered when she could speak again. "I was on my way to Copper Springs when our stagecoach was attacked." Cole nodded. "I figured as much. The stage arrived in town minus one passenger. They've been searching for you." Relief washed over her. "The other passengers, are they all right?" "Fine, from what I hear. No one was hurt, just robbed." He studied her carefully. "The driver said you ran off during the holdup. They searched for a while but couldn't find you." Rebecca closed her eyes, embarrassment heating her cheeks more than the lingering fever. "I panicked," she admitted. "When I saw the guns, I just ran. By the time I realized what I'd done, I was lost." "The desert's no place for a tenderfoot," Cole said, though his tone held no judgment. "You're lucky I happened by when I did." "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my life, Mr. O'Malley." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Cole, please. And you're welcome, Miss Anderson." "Rebecca," she corrected automatically. The bedroom door opened, and a plump Mexican woman entered carrying a tray. Her broad face lit up when she saw Rebecca awake. "Ah, está despierta. Good, good. You must eat now. Get your strength back." "This is Rosa," Cole explained, standing to make way for the housekeeper. "She's been caring for you." Rosa set the tray on the bedside table and helped Rebecca into a sitting position, propping pillows behind her back. "Only broth today," she said firmly. "Your stomach must learn again to accept food." As Rosa fussed over her, Rebecca took in her surroundings properly for the first time. The room was plainly furnished but clean and comfortable. A bookshelf stood against one wall, surprisingly well stocked. The furnishings were solid and masculine, clearly a man's room. "Is this your bedroom?" she asked Cole, mortified at the realization. He nodded, looking slightly uncomfortable. "It seemed the best place for you. I've been bunking with the hands." "I'm so sorry for the imposition," Rebecca said, distress evident in her voice. "Not at all," Cole assured her. "What kind of man would I be if I didn't offer help to someone in need?" Rebecca wanted to respond, but fatigue was already pulling at her again. Rosa seemed to notice, gently taking the empty broth cup from her hands. "Sleep now," the housekeeper said. "There will be time for talking when you are stronger." Rebecca didn't argue as Rosa helped her lie back down. Her eyelids grew heavy, but before sleep claimed her again, she sought Cole's gaze. "Thank you," she murmured. Truly, something warm flickered in his eyes. "Rest well, Rebecca." As she drifted off, Rebecca realized that for the first time in months, she felt safe. Over the next few days, Rebecca's strength gradually returned. Rosa proved to be a gentle but firm nurse. insisting on proper meals and limited activity while indulging Rebecca's desperate need for a proper bath and clean clothes. Since Rebecca's traveling trunk had continued on to Copper Springs with the stagecoach, Rosa lent her some simple garments that, while a bit short and wide, were blessedly clean. By her 4th day at Riverside Ranch, Rebecca felt strong enough to venture beyond the bedroom. Leaning on Rosa's arm, she made her way to the front porch, where Cole had set up a comfortable chair in the shade. "The fresh air will do you good," he said, helping her settle into the seat. "Just don't overdo it." Rebecca smiled up at him, noticing how the morning light highlighted threads of amber in his otherwise dark hair. "I'm already feeling much stronger," she assured him, "thanks to your hospitality and Rosa's excellent care." She had seen little of Cole since regaining consciousness, as he was busy with ranch work during the days. Their brief interactions had been polite but somewhat reserved, as if both were acutely aware of the impropriety of their situation, despite Rosa's constant chaperoning presence. "I sent word to Copper Springs that you've been found and are recovering here," Cole told her, leaning against the porch railing. "The school board is mighty relieved. They were afraid they'd lost their new teacher before she even arrived." "Oh," Rebecca exclaimed, "I should write to them immediately, assure them I'll be able to start as planned when the term begins next month." Cole nodded. "No rush. School's not set to start for another 3 weeks. Plenty of time for you to get your strength back." Rebecca gazed out at the ranch spreading before her. The main house sat on a slight rise, offering a view of corrals, barns, and beyond them, pastures where cattle grazed. A small creek wound through the property, explaining the ranch's name and the surprising greenery in this otherwise harsh landscape. "Your ranch is beautiful," she said sincerely. "You've built something impressive here." A flash of pride crossed Cole's face. "It's coming along. Still got a ways to go before it's what I envision, but we're making progress." "How long have you been here?" 5 years, he replied. "Bought the place when it was little more than a line shack and a few scrub acres. Previous owner couldn't make a go of it." Rebecca heard what he didn't say, that he had succeeded where others had failed. "That's remarkable. You must be very proud." Cole shrugged, seemingly uncomfortable with the praise. "Just doing what needed doing." He straightened up from the railing. "I should get back to work. Rosa's inside if you need anything." As he started to turn away, Rebecca impulsively reached out to touch his arm. "Mr. O'Malley Cole, I'm not sure I've properly thanked you, not just for rescuing me, but for all of this." She gestured to indicate the house, the care she'd received. "I know it's been an imposition." Cole's expression softened. "It's no imposition, Rebecca. Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said quietly. "Not anyone. I've learned that the hard way." Something in her tone made him pause, curiosity evident in his gaze, but he didn't press her for details. "Well, you're welcome here as long as you need," he said simply. "Rest now. I'll see you at supper." As he strode away toward the corrals, Rebecca found her gaze following him, admiring the confident set of his shoulders and the easy way he moved. There was something compelling about Cole O'Malley, a quiet strength that drew her despite her best intentions to keep her guard up. After her disastrous engagement in Boston, Rebecca had sworn off romantic entanglements. She had come west to start fresh, to focus on her teaching career and building an independent life far from scandal and heartbreak. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for the first kind man she encountered in Arizona territory. Yet as she watched Cole greet his ranch hands with easy camaraderie, she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her chest. She was attracted to him. Yes, what woman wouldn't be? But it was more than his handsome features that appealed to her. There was an integrity about him, a solid dependability that seemed rare in her experience. "Dangerous thoughts," she murmured to herself, turning her attention instead to the book Rosa had brought her. She was here to recover, nothing more. Soon enough, she would move on to Copper Springs and her new position, and this brief interlude at Riverside Ranch would become nothing but a pleasant memory. If only she could convince her fluttering heart of that fact. Later that evening, as Rebecca sat at the dining table for the first time since her arrival, She found herself studying Cole surreptitiously. In clean clothes, with his hair still damp from washing up, he looked less like a rugged rancher and more like the gentleman she suspected lurked beneath the surface. His table manners were impeccable, his conversation intelligent, hinting at an education that seemed at odds with his chosen profession. "Were you always a rancher?" she asked during a lull in the conversation. Cole looked up from his plate, seeming surprised by the personal question. "No," he admitted after a moment. "I grew up in Virginia. My family owned a horse farm before the war." The war between the states had ended 13 years ago, but Rebecca knew its wounds still ran deep, especially for Southerners. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Was it lost?" A shadow crossed his face. "Everything was lost. My father and older brother died at Gettysburg. Mother held on somehow until 66, but then influenza took her." He paused. "Nothing left to go back to after that." Rebecca's heart ached for the young man he must have been, facing such devastating losses. "And you came west?" Cole nodded. "Seemed as good a direction as any. Worked as a drover, cowhand, whatever jobs I could find. Saved every penny. When this place came up for sale, I took a chance." A small smile softened his features. "Best decision I ever made." "It suits you," Rebecca observed. "This land, this life." "And what about you?" Cole asked, turning the conversation away from himself. "What brings a Boston lady to the Arizona territory? Teaching can't be the only reason." Rebecca tensed, her fingers tightening around her fork. "Is my accent so obvious?" "Only to someone who's spent time back east," Cole said. "You didn't answer my question." She looked down at her plate, debating how much to share. "I needed a fresh start," she said finally. "Boston held painful memories." To her relief, Cole didn't press further. "Well, the children of Copper Springs will be lucky to have a teacher with your background. Most schoolmarms out here barely have more education than their older students." Rebecca seized the opportunity to move to safer conversational ground. "Tell me about Copper Springs. What sort of town is it?" As Cole described the mining town that would soon be her home, its modest but growing population, the mix of miners, merchants, and ranching families, Rebecca felt both excitement and trepidation. It would be a far cry from Boston society, but perhaps that was exactly what she needed. "The town's built up considerably in the last couple years since the Silver Strike," Cole explained. "New courthouse, a proper church, even a hotel that doesn't double as a saloon." He smiled. "Still rough around the edges, but decent folks for the most part." "And the school?" Rebecca asked eagerly. "New building, completed just last year. One room, of course, but solid construction with real glass windows. The previous teacher, Mrs. Hollister, had to return east when her husband passed. The children have been without formal schooling since spring." Rebecca nodded, mentally cataloging the information. "How many students can I expect?" 20, 25 perhaps. Ages 6 to 16 or so, mostly from town, but some ranch children who board in town during the week." Cole regarded her thoughtfully. "It won't be easy. Resources are limited, and some of those older boys can be a handful." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Rebecca said firmly, "or challenging students." A genuine smile spread across Cole's face, reaching his eyes and transforming his features. "No, I don't imagine you are, Miss Anderson. Anyone who survives 3 days alone in the desert has grit to spare." Rebecca felt a blush warm her cheeks at both the compliment and the undisguised admiration in his gaze. Before she could respond, Rosa entered with coffee and a simple dessert of baked apples, breaking the moment. As they finished their meal, Rebecca found herself wishing that Copper Springs wasn't quite so close, that her recovery might take just a little longer. The thought startled her. She had come west with clear purpose and plans. Developing an attachment to a rancher she barely knew was not part of those plans, no matter how kind or compelling he might be. Still, as they sat on the porch afterward, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Rebecca couldn't help but feel a contentment she hadn't experienced in a very long time. "It's beautiful," she murmured, gazing at the spectacular sky. This is my favorite time of day, Cole admitted, his voice soft, when the light makes everything seem possible. Rebecca turned to look at him, struck by the unexpected poetry in his words. Their eyes met, and for one breathtaking moment, something electric passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. Then Rosa called from inside, breaking the spell, and the moment was gone, but not forgotten. Over the next several days, Rebecca grew stronger. Soon she was able to walk around the ranch compound without assistance, exploring the gardens Rosa tended behind the house, and even venturing to the corral to watch Cole work with a spirited young horse. She found herself drawn to these moments of observation, admiring the gentle patience with which he handled the nervous animal. Cole spoke to the horse in low, soothing tones, never raising his voice or using force where persuasion would serve. "You have a way with them," Rebecca commented one afternoon as Cole finished a training session. He looked up, seeming surprised to find her watching from the fence. "They're honest creatures," he said, patting the horse's neck before leading it out of the corral. "They respond to fairness and consistency. Is that why you chose ranching?" "For the honesty of it." Cole secured the horse's lead to a post before joining her at the fence. "Maybe," he acknowledged. "After the war, everything seemed complicated. People, politics, society. Out here, things are simpler. Not easier, mind you, but clearer somehow." Rebecca nodded, understanding perfectly. "That's why I accepted the teaching position. In Boston, there were too many complications." "Would these complications have anything to do with why you ran from the stagecoach?" Cole asked gently. "Rosa said you talked about running from bad men in your fever." Rebecca stiffened. "The bandits frightened me, that's all." "Is it?" Cole's gaze was kind but penetrating. "You don't strike me as a woman who spooks easily, Rebecca." She looked away, focusing on the distant mountains. "Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think." "Perhaps not," he conceded, "but I'd like to." The simple honesty in his voice drew her eyes back to his. What she saw there, genuine interest, respect, and something warmer, made her breath catch. "My former fiancé," she found herself saying. "He wasn't who I thought he was. When I broke our engagement, he threatened to ruin my reputation, my future." She took a deep breath. "When I saw those armed men stopping the stagecoach, I feared he had sent them." Cole's expression darkened. "He threatened you?" "Not physically," Rebecca hastened to add, "but socially, yes. He had the connections to ensure I would never find a teaching position in Massachusetts." She lifted her chin. "So I looked further afield." "That took courage," Cole said, admiration evident in his tone. "Coming all this way alone?" Rebecca gave a small, sad smile. "Or desperation. Sometimes they're not so different." Cole hesitated, then asked, "Was he very cruel to you, this fiancé?" "William wasn't cruel exactly. Just calculating." Rebecca's fingers twisted nervously in her skirt. "I discovered he had only proposed to gain access to my father's shipping business. When father's company faced financial difficulties, William's interest in me suddenly waned." The pain of the betrayal had dulled over time, but the humiliation still stung. "When I confronted him, he became unpleasant." Cole's jaw tightened. "Sounds like a coward to me." "Yes," Rebecca agreed, surprised by the realization. "I suppose he was." They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Cole spoke again. "For what it's worth, I think you're better off without him. A man who only wants a woman for what she can give him doesn't deserve her." The simple statement, delivered without artifice, touched Rebecca deeply. "Thank you," she said softly. "That's worth a great deal, actually." Their gazes held, and Rebecca felt that same spark of connection she'd experienced on the porch days earlier. This time, however, there was no interruption, just the two of them, standing close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. Cole reached out slowly, as if to touch her cheek, then seemed to think better of it and withdrew his hand. "I should get back to work," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Will you join us for dinner again tonight?" "I'd like that," Rebecca replied, trying to hide her disappointment at the broken moment. As she watched him lead the horse toward the barn, Rebecca acknowledged the truth she'd been trying to deny. She was falling for Cole O'Malley. Despite her best intentions, despite her plans for independence, despite knowing that in just over a week she would be leaving for Copper Springs, her heart had made its own decision. The question was, what should she do about it? That evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner watching the stars emerge, Cole seemed unusually quiet. Rebecca found herself stealing glances at his profile, admiring the strong lines of his face silvered by moonlight. "I need to ride into Copper Springs tomorrow," he said suddenly. "Your trunk arrived at the general store. Thought you might like to have your own clothes again." "Oh," Rebecca brightened at the prospect. "That would be wonderful. Rosa has been so kind to lend me things, but I admit I miss my own garments." "I figured as much." Cole shifted in his chair to face her more directly. "I was thinking, perhaps you might want to come along. The doctor says you're well enough for short trips, and it would give you a chance to see the town, maybe meet some folks before you start teaching." Rebecca hesitated. The prospect of spending a day with Cole, away from the ranch, was appealing, but she wasn't sure her heart could take it. Each day in his company made it harder to maintain the emotional distance she knew was prudent. "You don't have to," Cole added quickly, misinterpreting her silence. "If you're not feeling up to it—" "No, I'd love to," Rebecca interrupted, deciding that prudence was overrated. "I'm curious to see my new home, and it would be good to meet people." Cole smiled, the expression transforming his features. "Good. We'll leave after breakfast. It's about an hour's ride in the wagon." As the evening deepened around them, their conversation flowed easily from topic to topic. Rebecca learned that Cole had a passion for literature, explaining the well-stocked bookshelf in his bedroom. He, in turn, listened with genuine interest as she shared stories of her teaching experiences at a girls' school in Boston. "You really love it, don't you?" he observed. "Teaching, I mean." "I do," Rebecca confirmed. "There's nothing quite like watching a child grasp a new concept, seeing that moment when understanding dawns in their eyes. It's magical." "My mother was a teacher before she married," Cole said, a nostalgic smile touching his lips. "She made sure my brother and I had proper educations, even after the war when resources were scarce. Said knowledge was the one thing no one could take from us." "She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. Cole's eyes held a faraway look. "You remind me of her sometimes. That same determination, same passion for learning." Rebecca felt oddly touched by the comparison. "I would have liked to meet her." "She would have liked you," Cole replied with certainty. "She always said a person's character shows in how they face adversity. By that measure, you'd have earned her highest respect." The compliment warmed Rebecca through. "You give me too much credit. I made a foolish mistake running into the desert." "Maybe," Cole acknowledged, "but you survived it." Many wouldn't have. Their conversation drifted to lighter topics as the night grew cooler. When Rebecca finally rose to retire, Cole stood as well, walking her to the door. "Sleep well, Rebecca," he said softly. "I'll see you in the morning." "Good night, Cole," she replied, lingering a moment longer than necessary. In the stillness between them, Rebecca felt that same magnetic pull, stronger now than before. For a heartbeat she thought hoped he might kiss her. Instead, he simply reached out and squeezed her hand gently before stepping back. As Rebecca prepared for bed in what she still thought of as Cole's room, she couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow might bring. One thing was certain. Her feelings for the rancher were growing deeper by the day. Complications and future plans be damned. The journey to Copper Springs the next morning was pleasant despite the growing heat of the day. Cole had risen early to prepare the wagon, and they set out just as the sun was beginning to burn away the dawn chill. Rebecca, wearing one of Rosa's freshly laundered dresses and a borrowed bonnet, felt almost like herself again. "Town's grown considerably since I first came to these parts," Cole told her as they traveled. "The silver strike in '75 brought the miners, and the railroad spur line last year made it easier for families to follow." How large is it now? Rebecca asked, trying to prepare herself mentally for her new home. About 600 souls, give or take. Main Street has all the essentials: general store, hotel, bank, a couple saloons, church, schoolhouse. Cole glanced at her. Nowhere near as grand as Boston, but civilized enough. It sounds perfect, Rebecca assured him, and meant it. After the stifling constraints of Boston society, a smaller community where she could establish herself on her own terms appealed greatly. As they crested a rise, Copper Springs came into view in the valley below, a collection of mostly wooden buildings clustered along a wide main street, with smaller structures spreading outward. The church steeple and school bell tower were the tallest landmarks, though the hotel and courthouse weren't far behind. "There she is," Cole said with a hint of pride. "Not much to look at, but she's growing." Rebecca studied the town with interest as they approached. It was indeed modest compared to Boston, but she could see signs of prosperity and permanence: glass windows in the larger buildings, a few painted facades, hitching posts and water troughs at regular intervals. "Where's the schoolhouse?" she asked eagerly. Cole pointed toward the north end of town. "Just there, with the small bell tower. Teachers' quarters are attached at the back, simple but private. The school board made sure of that after losing 3 teachers in 5 years to marriage." Rebecca laughed. "Is finding a husband so easy in Copper Springs? When you're one of the few unmarried women in a town full of miners and ranchers?" Cole raised an eyebrow. "I'd say your bigger challenge will be fending off unwanted proposals." Though his tone was light, Rebecca thought she detected a hint of tension beneath it. "Well, they'll be disappointed," she said firmly. "I've no intention of marrying any time soon." Cole's expression was unreadable as he guided the wagon onto the main street. "We'll stop at Harker's General Store first," he said. "Your trunk should be there, and I need supplies." The general store was busy when they arrived, but activity paused as Cole helped Rebecca down from the wagon. She felt the curious stares of the townsfolk and lifted her chin, determined to make a good first impression. "Cole O'Malley!" boomed a cheerful voice. "Twice in 1 month? The world must be ending." A heavy-set man with impressive mutton-chop whiskers emerged from the store, wiping his hands on his apron. "Morning, Harker," Cole greeted him. "Came to pick up some supplies in Miss Anderson's trunk. This is Rebecca Anderson, Copper Springs' new teacher." Harker's face lit up. "Miss Anderson, we'd about given you up for lost. Word came that Cole here found you wandering in the desert." Rebecca felt her cheeks warm at being the subject of town gossip already. "Mr. O'Malley saved my life," she acknowledged. "I became separated from the stagecoach during the robbery." "Terrible business that," Harker said, shaking his head. "Sheriff's got a posse out looking for those bandits, but they're slippery devils." He beamed at Rebecca. "Well, we're mighty pleased you're safe and sound. The whole town's been looking forward to having a proper teacher again." As Cole went inside to arrange for his supplies, Harker escorted Rebecca to a small office at the back of the store, where her trunk waited. The sight of her belongings brought an unexpected wave of emotion, a tangible link to her past life, to the person she'd been before the desert. "Thank you for keeping it safe," she told Harker sincerely. "My pleasure, Miss Anderson. Now, while Cole sorts out his business, let me introduce you to some folks. The Ladies' Aid Society is meeting in the church hall today. They'd be tickled to meet you." Before Rebecca could protest, she found herself being guided down the street toward the white clapboard church. Within minutes, she was surrounded by the town's prominent women, all eager to meet the new schoolteacher. Mrs. Jenkins, the doctor's wife and president of the society, took charge immediately. "You poor dear, such an ordeal you've had, but you're looking remarkably well. Has Cole been taking good care of you?" "Mr. O'Malley and his housekeeper have been most kind," Rebecca replied carefully, noting the speculative gleam in several women's eyes. "Cole's a good man," declared a silver-haired woman introduced as Mrs. Whitman, the mayor's wife. "Keeps to himself mostly, but always first to help when there's trouble. Been wondering when he'd finally bring a woman to town." "Oh, it's not like that," Rebecca hastened to correct her. "Mr. O'Malley merely rescued me after I became lost. I've been recovering at his ranch until I was well enough to travel to town." The ladies exchanged knowing glances that made Rebecca's cheeks burn. "Of course, dear," Mrs. Jenkins said soothingly, though her expression remained skeptical. "Now, tell us about yourself. We understand you come from Boston?" For the next half hour, Rebecca fielded questions about her background, her teaching experience, and her journey west. She answered carefully, sharing enough to satisfy curiosity while avoiding mention of her broken engagement or the scandal that had precipitated her departure from Boston. Finally, Mrs. Whitman checked her watch and announced, "Ladies, we should let Miss Anderson return to Mr. O'Malley. I'm sure they have much to do today." She turned to Rebecca. "Will you be staying in town now, dear?" "No, I'll return to Riverside Ranch until next week," Rebecca explained. "Dr. Jenkins advised a full recovery before I take up my duties, and the school term doesn't begin for another 2 weeks." More meaningful glances were exchanged, but the women merely smiled and wished her well. As Rebecca left the church hall, she caught snippets of excited whispers behind her and quickened her pace, eager to escape the speculation. She found Cole waiting outside the general store, looking somewhat uncomfortable as he conversed with a distinguished-looking older man. "Ah, here she is now," Cole said as Rebecca approached, relief evident in his expression. "Rebecca, this is Judge Blackburn, head of the school board." The judge, a tall man with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard, bowed slightly. "Miss Anderson, what a pleasure to finally meet you. We were most distressed to hear of your misadventure." "Thank you, Your Honor. I'm very sorry for any worry I caused." "The important thing is that you're safe," the judge said kindly. "Cole here tells me you're recovering well and should be ready to begin teaching on schedule." "Yes, absolutely," Rebecca assured him. "I'm eager to meet my students and begin our work together." "Excellent," the judge beamed. "I won't keep you now, but perhaps you might join my wife and me for dinner before the term begins. We'd love to discuss your plans for the curriculum." "I'd be delighted," Rebecca replied, genuinely pleased by the warm welcome. After the judge took his leave, Cole turned to Rebecca with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry about that. Word spreads fast in a small town." "I've noticed," she said wryly. "The Ladies' Aid Society has likely already planned our wedding." Cole's eyes widened momentarily before he caught her teasing tone. "Ah, you met the town matchmakers." "Indeed. They seem particularly interested in your marital prospects, Mr. O'Malley." A flush crept up Cole's neck. "They've been trying to pair me off for years," he admitted. "I've learned to avoid town during quilting bees and socials." Rebecca laughed, the sound drawing appreciative glances from passers-by. "Well, they're quite convinced we're perfectly suited for each other." "Are they now?" Cole's voice softened, and something in his expression made Rebecca's heart skip. "And what do you think about that, Miss Anderson?" Before she could formulate a response, they were interrupted by a boisterous greeting from across the street. "Cole, you old son of a gun!" A tall, sandy-haired man in a sheriff's badge strode toward them, grinning broadly. Cole's face lit up with genuine pleasure as he shook the man's hand. "Sam, thought you were out chasing those stagecoach robbers." "Got back last night," the sheriff replied. "No luck yet, but we found their trail heading south toward the border." He turned curious eyes to Rebecca. "This must be the schoolteacher you rescued?" "Rebecca Anderson, meet Sheriff Sam Wilson," Cole introduced them. "We served together during the war, then both ended up in these parts afterward." "A pleasure, Sheriff," Rebecca said, extending her hand. "I understand you've been searching for the men who robbed our stagecoach." "Yes, madam. Sorry we haven't caught them yet, but we will." The sheriff studied her with frank admiration. "Cole told me you survived 3 days alone in the desert. That's mighty impressive." "I was fortunate Mr. O'Malley found me when he did," Rebecca demurred. "Lucky for both of you, I'd say," Sam remarked with a knowing grin that made Cole shoot him a warning look. "Say, why don't you two join me for lunch at the hotel? Mrs. Pruitt makes a fine stew on Wednesdays." Cole glanced at Rebecca questioningly. She nodded, curious to learn more about Cole through his friend and hungry after the morning's socializing. The hotel dining room was crowded but comfortable, with clean tablecloths and surprisingly good food. As they ate, Sam regaled Rebecca with stories of his and Cole's adventures, both during the war and in their early days in the territory. "This one," Sam said, pointing his fork at Cole, "saved my hide more times than I can count. Most stubborn, loyal friend a man could ask for." "You make me sound like a faithful hound," Cole grumbled, though his eyes showed he took no offense. "Nah, too ornery for a dog," Sam teased. "More like one of those mountain lions, keeps to himself mostly, but fierce when it counts." Rebecca smiled, enjoying this glimpse of Cole through someone else's eyes. "How did you both end up in Copper Springs?" "I came first," Sam explained. "Took the sheriff's job in '71 when the town was hardly more than a mining camp. Wrote to this reprobate when I heard about land opening up for homesteading." He grinned at Cole. Figured he needed someone to keep him out of trouble. "As I recall," Cole countered dryly, "it was you who needed the bailouts more often than not." The easy camaraderie between the men warmed Rebecca's heart. It was clear they shared a deep bond forged in difficult circumstances. As lunch concluded, Sam was called away on sheriff's business, leaving Cole and Rebecca to finish their coffee alone. "He's a good man," Cole said, watching his friend leave. "One of the best I know." "You're fortunate to have such a friend," Rebecca observed. Cole nodded thoughtfully. "The war taught me to value true friendship. You learn quickly who stands with you when things get hard." There was a depth of experience in his words that reminded Rebecca how different their backgrounds were. While she had endured social difficulties and a broken engagement, Cole had faced the horrors of war and rebuilt his life from nothing. "Shall we see the schoolhouse before we head back?" Cole suggested, finishing his coffee. "I know you're curious about it." Rebecca's face lit up. "Yes, please, I'd love to see where I'll be teaching." The schoolhouse stood at the quieter end of town, a sturdy wooden structure painted white with a small bell tower above the entrance. Cole produced a key entrusted to him by Judge Blackburn and unlocked the double doors, allowing Rebecca to enter first. The classroom was larger than Rebecca had expected, with rows of wooden desks facing a raised teacher's platform. Large windows let in ample light, and a black slate board covered most of the front wall. A pot-bellied stove stood in one corner for winter heating. "It's wonderful," Rebecca breathed, running her fingers along the nearest desk. "So much nicer than I imagined." "The town takes pride in education," Cole explained. "Many of these miners and ranchers grew up without proper schooling. They want better for their children." Rebecca moved to the teacher's desk, envisioning herself conducting lessons, guiding young minds. The reality of her new position, her new life, suddenly felt very immediate and very right. "Would you like to see your living quarters?" Cole asked. A door at the back of the classroom led to a small but tidy apartment consisting of a sitting room with a small kitchen area, a bedroom, and a washroom. The furnishings were simple but adequate, and someone had placed a vase of wildflowers on the small dining table. "The Ladies' Aid Society prepared it for you," Cole explained. "They keep it clean between teachers." Rebecca moved through the rooms, already planning where she would place her few personal belongings. The apartment was modest, but it would be hers alone, a place where she could build her new independent life. "It's perfect," she said sincerely. When she turned back to Cole, she found him watching her with an odd expression, something between admiration and melancholy. "What is it?" she asked softly. He seemed to shake himself. "Nothing, just, you look right here. Like you belong." The simple observation touched her deeply. "Thank you for showing me." "We should head back," Cole said, checking his pocket watch. "Storm clouds building to the west. Best not get caught in it." As they walked back to the wagon, Rebecca felt a strange mix of emotions. Excitement for her new position, yes, but also a growing sadness at the thought of leaving Riverside Ranch, leaving Cole in just a few days. They loaded her trunk and Cole's supplies, then set off for the ranch with the darkening sky at their backs. They had traveled perhaps halfway when the first fat raindrops began to fall. "Hang on," Cole called over the rising wind. "I'm going to try to outrun the worst of it." He urged the horses to a faster pace, but the desert storm moved swiftly. Within minutes, rain was pelting down. and thunder boomed overhead. Rebecca clutched her borrowed bonnet as the wind threatened to tear it away. "There's a line shack just ahead," Cole shouted above the storm. "We'll wait it out there." He guided the wagon off the main trail toward a small structure barely visible through the curtain of rain. By the time they reached it, both were thoroughly soaked despite the wagon's canvas cover. The line shack was primitive, but sound a single room with a small stove, a narrow bed, a rough table with 2 chairs, and shelves stocked with basic provisions. Cole quickly lit the lamp hanging by the door, then set about starting a fire in the stove. "These summer storms usually pass quickly," he said, striking a match to the kindling, "but they can be fierce while they last." Rebecca stood dripping by the door, suddenly acutely aware of their isolated situation. She was alone in a remote cabin with a man who was not her husband or relative, a scandalous position by any standard. As if reading her thoughts, Cole straightened from the now crackling fire. "I know this isn't proper," he said carefully, "but I promise you're safe with me, Rebecca, always." The sincerity in his voice eased her concern. "I know that," she said softly. "I trust you, Cole." Something flickered in his eyes at her words, something warm and perhaps a bit dangerous. He cleared his throat and turned to rummage through a trunk in the corner. "I keep spare clothes here," he explained, pulling out a flannel shirt and worn trousers. "Not exactly ladies' fashion, but they're dry. You can change behind that curtain while I check on the horses." Once alone, Rebecca gratefully peeled off her sodden dress and petticoats. Cole's clothes were comically large on her frame, but blessedly warm and dry. She rolled up the sleeves and pant legs, then used a piece of rope from the supplies to cinch the trousers at her waist. Her wet hair she braided loosely to keep it from tangling. When Cole returned, equally drenched, he stopped short at the sight of her in his clothes. For a moment, he simply stared, an expression she couldn't quite decipher crossing his features. He gestured vaguely toward the curtain, grabbing dry clothes for himself. While he changed, Rebecca hung her wet garments near the stove to dry and set about exploring the provisions. She found coffee, beans, salt pork, and flour, enough to make a simple meal if they needed to wait out the storm. "Looks like we might be here a while," Cole said when he emerged, gesturing toward the small window where rain still lashed furiously. "That's settled in for a good hour at least." Rebecca nodded, trying to ignore how well he looked in his fresh clothes, hair damp and slightly curling. "I found coffee," she offered. "Shall I make some?" "That would be welcome," Cole agreed, keeping a careful distance between them as he moved to check the stove. They worked together comfortably, preparing coffee and a simple meal from the provisions. By the time they sat down to eat, the initial awkwardness had faded, replaced by the easy companionship they'd developed over the past weeks. "This reminds me of camping trips with my father when I was young," Rebecca remarked, sipping her coffee. "We'd fish in the lakes north of Boston. Mother thought it terribly unladylike, but Father said every child should know how to fend for themselves in nature." Cole smiled at the image. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Rebecca agreed, a touch of sadness in her voice. "He passed away last year. Heart failure." "I'm sorry," Cole said quietly. "Were you close?" Rebecca nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Very. He encouraged my education when many men of his generation thought it unnecessary for daughters, said I had a good mind and should use it." She traced the rim of her cup absently. "When I decided to come west, Mother was horrified, but I think Father would have understood." "Because he taught you to be self-sufficient," Cole suggested. "Yes, exactly." Rebecca looked up, surprised and touched that he understood so well. "Everyone in Boston thought I was running away, but really, I was running toward something, a life of my own making." "That takes courage," Cole said, his eyes holding hers, "more than most people have." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the small cabin, a different kind of energy was building a tension, both exhilarating and frightening in its intensity. "Cole," Rebecca said softly, setting down her cup, "may I ask you something personal?" He nodded, his expression guarded but open. Why have you never married? A man like you, with a successful ranch, in a town where eligible women are scarce. She trailed off, suddenly embarrassed by her boldness. Cole was quiet for so long that Rebecca feared she'd offended him. Finally he spoke, his voice low and measured. After the war, I wasn't whole. Saw too much. Lost too much? His fingers traced a pattern on the rough wooden table. Didn't think I had anything worth offering a woman. And now? The question slipped out before Rebecca could stop it. Cole's eyes lifted to meet hers, filled with an emotion that made her breath catch. Now I'm beginning to wonder if I was wrong about that. The simple statement, delivered without artifice or pretense, struck Rebecca to her core. In that moment, with rain drumming on the roof and the small stove casting golden light across Cole's features, she knew with absolute certainty that she was falling in love with him. The realization should have terrified her after her experience with William. Instead, it filled her with a quiet joy and an equally quiet sorrow. In a few days, she would move to town, take up her position as teacher, begin the independent life she had journeyed so far to create, and Cole, kind, honorable Cole, would return to his ranch alone. Unless, Rebecca took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Cole, A tremendous crack of thunder shook the cabin, making them both jump. The storm, instead of abating, seemed to be intensifying. That was close, Cole said, rising to check the window. Might be a flash flood coming. The arroyo near here fills fast in heavy rain. The moment was broken, but the awareness between them remained, a living thing that seemed to fill the small space of the cabin. As Cole turned back from the window, Rebecca stood as well, suddenly unable to remain still with so much emotion coursing through her. They stood facing each other, barely an arm's length apart, the storm raging around the small haven they'd found. Rebecca, Cole said, her name almost a question in his mouth. She took a step toward him, heart pounding. Yes? His hand reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek. I think I'm in danger of falling in love with you, he said quietly, and I'm not sure what to do about it. The honest admission, so like the man himself, brought tears to Rebecca's eyes. I think, she whispered, I'm in the same danger. Cole's expression transformed, hope warring with uncertainty. You're just starting your new life. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of that. What if, Rebecca said carefully, my new life could include you? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Cole's hand, still near her face, cupped her cheek gently. Is that what you want? Instead of answering with words, Rebecca found her courage and rose on tiptoe, pressing her lips softly to his. For a heartbeat, Cole remained still, as if afraid she might vanish if he moved. Then, with a sound somewhere between a sigh and a groan, his arms came around her, pulling her close as he returned her kiss with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the moment you opened your eyes in my bed, he admitted. Rebecca laughed softly. I've wanted you to since the moment I saw you watching me from the porch. Outside, the storm began to ease, the thunder moving away across the desert. Inside, a different kind of storm had just begun, one that promised not destruction, but renewal. What happens now? Rebecca asked, still held securely in Cole's arms. Now, he said, his eyes warm with promise, we see where this trail leads us. Together. It seemed the perfect answer for two people who had found each other in the vast wilderness of life's unexpected journeys. The storm passed, leaving behind a freshly washed landscape and a gloriously clear sky. As Cole helped Rebecca back into the wagon, her clothes now dry, if somewhat wrinkled, they shared a private smile that held all the promise of their newfound understanding. The journey back to Riverside Ranch was filled with a comfortable silence, occasionally broken by conversation about practical matters. Rebecca's move to town the following week, preparations for the school term, ranch business that would bring Cole to Copper Springs regularly. Neither mentioned the kiss they had shared, yet it hung between them like a tangible thread, connecting them across the small distance that separated them on the wagon seat. Occasionally their hands would brush, sending a thrill through Rebecca that made her wonder at her own transformation. How had she gone from fearing attachment to craving it in such a short time? The answer, she knew, lay in the man beside her, a man unlike any she had known before. Cole's quiet strength, his integrity, his willingness to let her find her own way while offering support when needed, these were the qualities that had slipped past her defenses and into her heart. As they approached Riverside Ranch in the golden light of late afternoon, Rebecca found herself seeing it with new eyes, not as a temporary haven, but as a place that could, perhaps, one day be home. Rosa met them at the door, clucking with concern over their delayed return and slightly rumpled appearance. "The storm, it was terrible. I worried you might be caught in it." "We waited it out in the line shack," Cole explained, carrying Rebecca's trunk inside. "We're fine, just hungry." "Dinner will be ready soon," Rosa promised, eyeing them both with a knowing look that made Rebecca blush. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Cole reached over and took Rebecca's hand in his. The simple gesture felt both new and familiar, as if they had somehow always been meant to find this connection. "I've been thinking," Cole said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, "about what comes next." Rebecca turned to him, heart quickening. "And what have you concluded?" "That I'd like to court you properly," he said, his directness both surprising and charming her. "I know you need to establish yourself in town, begin your teaching. I respect that. But I'd like to call on you if you're willing." The formal request, so at odds with the passionate kiss they had shared earlier, made Rebecca smile. "I think I'd like that very much," she replied, squeezing his hand. "Though I believe we may have things a bit out of order." A slow smile spread across Cole's face. "I've never been much for convention," he admitted, "but some things are worth doing right." The week that followed was both the shortest and longest of Rebecca's life. Each day brought increased strength and a growing eagerness to begin her teaching position. Yet each day also brought her closer to leaving Riverside Ranch, and though she knew she would see Cole regularly, the thought of no longer sharing daily meals and evening conversations with him created an unexpected ache. They spent their remaining time together wisely, talking long into the evenings about their pasts, their dreams, their beliefs. Rebecca learned about Cole's experiences during the war stories he rarely shared with anyone, and the long, difficult journey that had brought him west in search of a fresh start. In turn, she told him about her life in Boston, her passion for education, and her determination to create a meaningful life on her own terms. "You know," Cole said on their final evening together, "most women who come west are looking for husbands. You might be the first I've met who came specifically to avoid marriage." Rebecca laughed softly. "Not to avoid it entirely," she corrected, "just to ensure that if I did marry, it would be on my terms for the right reasons." She glanced at him shyly. "With the right man?" Cole's eyes darkened at her words. "And have your criteria changed since coming west?" "Not changed," Rebecca said thoughtfully. "Clarified, perhaps. I know now that I want someone who sees me as an equal partner, who respects my independence while offering support when I need it." She met his gaze directly. "Someone like you, Cole O'Malley." The admission hung between them, both a confession and an invitation. Cole leaned forward, brushing his lips gently across hers in a kiss that held as much promise as passion. "Rebecca Anderson," he murmured against her mouth, "you continue to surprise me." The morning of Rebecca's departure dawned clear and bright. Cole had arranged for her trunk to be loaded onto the wagon, and Rosa had packed a basket of food for her first day in the teacher's quarters. "You will visit soon?" Rosa asked as she embraced Rebecca goodbye. The older woman's eyes were suspiciously bright. "The house, it will be too quiet without you." "I promise," Rebecca assured her, touched by the genuine affection. "And you must come to town to visit me." As Cole helped her into the wagon, Their hands lingered together longer than necessary. The drive to Copper Springs was filled with a bittersweet anticipation excitement for the new beginning, sadness at the ending of their time at Riverside Ranch. "I'll be in town twice a week for supplies and ranch business," Cole reminded her as they approached the outskirts of Copper Springs, "and the ranch is always open to you whenever you want to visit." "I know," Rebecca smiled, though her heart felt oddly heavy. "It's not really goodbye." Yet, as Cole helped her settle into her quarters behind the schoolhouse, arranging her trunk and making sure she had everything she needed, Rebecca couldn't shake a sense of loss. This was what she had wanted: independence, her own space, a position that used her education and skills. Why then did it suddenly feel less satisfying than she had anticipated? "I should go," Cole said finally, standing awkwardly by the door. "Let you get settled in." "Yes, of course," Rebecca agreed, equally awkward. After the easy intimacy they had developed at the ranch, this formal parting felt strangely painful. Cole stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I meant what I said about courting you properly," he said, his voice low and serious. "I'll call on you tomorrow evening, if that's acceptable." Rebecca nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Cole bent and kissed her softly, a gentle promise rather than a passionate embrace. "Until tomorrow, then," he said, releasing her hands reluctantly. After he left, Rebecca stood in the middle of her new quarters, surrounded by her belongings, but feeling oddly lost. This was what she had traveled thousands of miles to find. So why did she suddenly feel as though she had left something essential behind? The answer, of course, was as simple as it was complicated. In finding her independence, she had also found Cole O'Malley. And now she had to determine if there was a way to have both. The following weeks fell into a pattern as Rebecca began her teaching duties. The children of Copper Springs proved to be bright and eager, if somewhat unruly after months without formal instruction. Rebecca found herself challenged and fulfilled by the work, especially as she got to know her students and could tailor her teaching to their individual needs. True to his word, Cole called on her regularly. Twice a week he would arrive in town for ranch business, always making time to visit the schoolhouse. Sometimes they would take a walk through town, other times share a meal at the hotel dining room. On Sundays, Cole would attend church services, sitting beside Rebecca in a way that left no doubt about his intentions toward the new schoolteacher. The town, predictably, buzzed with speculation. The Ladies' Aid Society watched their courtship with undisguised interest, and Rebecca often caught snippets of conversation that ceased abruptly when she approached. "You're the most exciting thing to happen to Copper Springs since the Silver Strike," Cole teased after one particularly obvious incident of gossip. "Poor Mrs. Whitman nearly strained her neck trying to see if you were wearing a ring yet," Rebecca laughed, though the comment brought a flush to her cheeks. "They'll have to wait a while longer for that particular news," she said lightly. "I've only just begun teaching." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Disappointment, perhaps? But he merely smiled and changed the subject. As September gave way to October, Rebecca found herself settling comfortably into her new life. Her students were making excellent progress, and she had formed friendships with several of the town's women, particularly Dr. Jenkins's wife, Sarah, who shared Rebecca's interest in literature and progressive ideas. The only shadow on her happiness was a growing sense of division between her life in town and her feelings for Cole. Though their courtship progressed steadily, with increasingly passionate encounters during their limited time alone, Rebecca couldn't help feeling that something was missing, a deeper connection that their separate lives made difficult to achieve. The situation came to a head one crisp Saturday in late October. Cole had invited Rebecca to spend the day at Riverside Ranch, her first visit back since moving to town. Rosa welcomed her with open arms and a feast of favorite dishes, and Rebecca was surprised by how much the ranch already felt like home. After dinner, Cole suggested a ride to show her the autumn colors along the creek. As they rode side by side through the golden afternoon, Rebecca found herself studying Cole's profile, struck anew by the quiet strength in his features and the peace he seemed to find in this landscape. They stopped at a particularly beautiful spot where the creek widened into a small pool, surrounded by cottonwoods whose leaves shimmered yellow in the sunlight. Cole helped Rebecca dismount, his hands lingering at her waist. "I've missed you," he said softly, drawing her closer. "Town visits aren't the same as having you here." "I've missed you too," Rebecca admitted, resting her hands on his chest. "More than I expected to." Cole's kiss was deeper than usual, tinged with a hunger that matched her own. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. "Rebecca," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion, "I need to ask you something." Her heart quickened at his tone. "Yes?" Cole took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I know it hasn't been very long," he began, "and I promised to let you establish your independence, but these past weeks, being apart from you most of the time." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "I love you, Rebecca Anderson. Will you marry me?" Though she had half expected the question, Rebecca found herself momentarily speechless. Joy and uncertainty warred within her as she stared at the ring. "I know you value your independence," Cole continued when she didn't immediately respond, "and I would never ask you to give up teaching. We could live in town during the school terms if you prefer, or I could build you a schoolhouse here at the ranch for the children nearby. Whatever you want, however you want to arrange things, I want you in my life, Rebecca, every day, not just when I can make it to town." The earnestness in his expression, the clear thought he had given to how they might merge their lives without requiring her to abandon her own goals, these were the very qualities that had made her fall in love with him. "Yes," she said finally, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, Cole O'Malley, I will marry you." The joy that transformed his face was something Rebecca knew she would remember for the rest of her life. Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into an embrace that lifted her feet off the ground. "You've made me the happiest man in the territory," he declared, spinning her around before setting her gently back on her feet. "When? How soon can it be?" Rebecca laughed at his eagerness. "I need to fulfill my teaching contract for the term," she reminded him. "It ends just before Christmas." "Christmas Eve wedding?" Cole suggested, his eyes alight with plans. "Start the new year together?" "Perfect," Rebecca agreed, her heart so full she thought it might burst. As they rode back to the ranch house, plans flowing between them like the creek beside them, Rebecca marveled at the journey that had brought her here. Lost in the desert, she had found not only a rescuer, but a partner who understood her in ways she hadn't known she needed to be understood. She had come west seeking independence, but in Cole's love, she had found something even more valuable, the freedom to be fully herself, cherished not despite, but because of her strength, her determination, her dreams. That evening, as they announced their engagement to an absolutely delighted Rosa, Rebecca felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The horizon, once so distant and unknown, now felt like home. News of their engagement spread through Copper Springs like wildfire. By Monday morning, when Rebecca arrived at the schoolhouse, she found a vase of flowers on her desk and a cluster of giggling girls waiting to admire her ring. "Are you going to live at Mr. O'Malley's ranch?" "Miss Anderson?" asked 10-year-old Sally Jenkins, her eyes wide with romance. "Eventually," Rebecca confirmed, "but I'll finish the school term first, as I promised." "Will you still be our teacher after you're married?" worried Thomas Wilson, one of her older students. Rebecca smiled reassuringly. "That depends on what the school board decides, but Mr. O'Malley and I have discussed the possibility of my continuing to teach, perhaps at a school closer to the ranch for the children who live too far to attend here in town." This answer seemed to satisfy the children, and Rebecca was able to direct their attention to the day's lessons. But throughout the day, she found her thoughts straying to the future. She and Cole were building a future that now seemed infinitely more exciting than the independent life she had originally planned. The school board, when officially notified of her engagement and proposed departure at the end of the term, expressed both congratulations and concern. "We're delighted for you, of course," Judge Blackburn told her, "but finding qualified teachers is no small task. We had hoped you might stay longer." "I understand," Rebecca said, "and I've been giving it some thought. There are several children near Riverside Ranch who can't attend school regularly because of the distance. Cole and I have discussed the possibility of establishing a small school there, which I would teach. Perhaps we could arrange for it to be a subsidiary of the town school, under your board's supervision." The judge's eyebrows rose in interest. "An innovative suggestion, Miss Anderson. Let me discuss it with the other board members." By the following week, a plan had been approved. Rebecca would complete the current term in Copper Springs, then establish a branch school at Riverside Ranch after the Christmas break. The arrangement would allow ranching families in the outlying areas to send their children to school without the expense and separation of boarding them in town. "You continue to amaze me," Cole told her when she shared the news. "Most women would be content to settle into being a rancher's wife. You're already expanding my operation into education." Rebecca laughed, but detected a note of genuine admiration in his teasing. "Does it bother you that I want to continue teaching after we're married?" Cole's expression turned serious. "Rebecca, I fell in love with you precisely because you have a mind of your own and the courage to use it. I don't want you to change who you are to become my wife. I want to build something together, something neither of us could create alone." His words warmed her through, confirming yet again that she had found a truly exceptional man. "I love you, Cole O'Malley," she said simply, "more than I ever thought possible." As the weeks passed and December approached, wedding preparations occupied whatever time Rebecca could spare from her teaching duties. The entire town seemed involved in the event, with the Ladies' Aid Society insisting on hosting a proper celebration in the church hall following the ceremony. Rosa and Miguel traveled to town frequently, helping with arrangements and getting to know the townsfolk who had become important in Rebecca's life. Rosa and Sarah Jenkins formed an immediate bond, collaborating on everything from the wedding feast to the decoration of the church. "You have made many friends here," Rosa observed one afternoon as they reviewed the growing guest list. "It is good. A bride should be surrounded by people who care for her happiness." Rebecca nodded, thinking of the community that had welcomed her so warmly. "I never expected to find such a home here," she admitted. "When I left Boston, I thought I was leaving everything familiar behind." "Instead, you found where you truly belong," Rosa said wisely. "With Cole, yes, but also in this place, with these people." The observation stayed with Rebecca long after Rosa had returned to the ranch. She had indeed found a sense of belonging in this frontier community that had eluded her in the sophisticated society of her birth. Here, she was valued for her contributions, her character, her willingness to work alongside others for the common good, not for her family connections or social standing. And at the center of this new life stood Cole, a man whose quiet strength and unwavering integrity had first saved her life, then captured her heart. The week before the wedding, a letter arrived from Boston, a response to the announcement Rebecca had dutifully sent to her mother. She opened it with trepidation, expecting disapproval of her hasty engagement to a man Mrs. Anderson had never met. Instead, the letter contained a surprise. "My dear Rebecca, your news, while unexpected, brings me more joy than I can express. Your father always believed you would find your own path, though I confess I found it difficult to share his confidence when you departed so suddenly for that wild territory. I have enclosed your grandmother's pearls, which should have reached you by now in a separate package. They have traditionally been worn by Anderson brides, and I would be pleased for you to continue this tradition, even so far from home. More surprising still, if you and your Mr. O'Malley are amenable, I should like to visit in the spring once travel conditions improve. Perhaps an old Boston matron might find some interest in the frontier life that has so captivated my daughter. With love and best wishes for your happiness," Mother Rebecca read the letter twice, tears blurring her vision. Her mother's acceptance, so unexpected yet deeply longed for, felt like the final piece falling into place in her new life. When she shared the letter with Cole that evening, his response was immediate and generous. "Of course she must visit," he said. "We'll make her comfortable. By spring, the new addition to the house should be complete." The new addition was Cole's surprise wedding gift to Rebecca, an expansion of the ranch house to include a proper library and study where she could prepare her lessons, and eventually, they both hoped, a nursery for the children they dreamed of having. "You think she'll approve of me?" Cole asked, a rare hint of insecurity in his voice. Rebecca touched his cheek gently. "She'll see what I see, a good man who makes her daughter happier than she ever thought possible." Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold, with a dusting of snow that transformed Copper Springs into something from a fairy tale. Rebecca woke early in her quarters behind the schoolhouse, knowing it was the last morning she would spend there. By nightfall, she would be Mrs. Cole O'Malley, mistress of Riverside Ranch. The thought brought not anxiety, but a peaceful certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, taking a step that would enrich rather than diminish her life. Sarah Jenkins arrived mid-morning with several other women to help Rebecca prepare. Her wedding dress, ordered from a Denver dressmaker, was simple but elegant ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, more practical than the elaborate gowns fashionable in Boston, but beautiful nonetheless. "Cole won't be able to take his eyes off you," Sarah declared as she fastened Rebecca's grandmother's pearls around her neck. "Though that's nothing new. The man looks at you like you hung the moon and stars." Rebecca blushed, though she couldn't deny the truth of the observation. Cole's love was constant and unwavering, expressed not just in words but in countless thoughtful actions that showed how deeply he understood her. By 4 o'clock, as winter twilight settled over the town, Rebecca stood at the back of the church on Sheriff Wilson's arm. With no male relatives present, Sam had offered to give her away, an honor that clearly moved the usually jovial lawman. "Nervous?" he asked as they waited for the music to signal their entrance. "Not at all," Rebecca replied truthfully. "I've never been more certain of anything." The simple words seemed to touch Sam deeply. "He's a lucky man, Miss Anderson. But then, he's always had a knack for finding treasures where others just see dessert." Then the music swelled, the doors opened, and Rebecca began the walk toward her future. Cole stood at the altar, his tall frame resplendent in a new black suit, his eyes finding hers immediately. The love in his gaze was so palpable that Rebecca felt it like a physical embrace, warming her from within as she moved toward him. The ceremony itself was a blur of emotions and sacred promises. Rebecca would later remember clearly only the moment when Cole slipped the gold band onto her finger alongside her engagement ring, and the minister's words, "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Then Cole was kissing her, properly but with a promise of passion to come, and they were turning to face the congregation as Dr. Jenkins announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Mr. and Mrs. Cole O'Malley." The celebration that followed in the church hall was joyous and boisterous, with seemingly the entire population of Copper Springs in attendance. There was music and dancing, abundant food prepared by the Ladies' Aid Society under Rose's direction, and so many well wishes that Rebecca's cheeks ached from smiling. Through it all, Cole remained at her side, his hand often finding hers as if he couldn't quite believe she was really his wife. The wonder in his eyes whenever he looked at her made Rebecca feel like the most precious person in the world. As the evening progressed, Cole leaned close to whisper in her ear, "Are you ready to go home, Mrs. O'Malley?" Home. The word held new meaning now, not a place, but a person. Wherever Cole was, that was home. "Yes," she whispered back, "take me home." They slipped away amid cheers and good-natured teasing, boarding the sleigh Cole had prepared for the journey to Riverside Ranch. Bundled together beneath thick furs against the winter night, they set off across the moonlit landscape. "Happy?" Cole asked, his arm secure around her as he guided the horses. Rebecca leaned into his warmth, her head resting on his shoulder. "Completely. And you?" "More than I ever thought possible." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Thank you for saying yes, to the proposal, to this life. How could I not? Rebecca replied softly. You showed me what love really means, Cole. Not possession or control, but partnership and respect. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the jingling of the harness and the soft shush of runners on snow. Finally, the lights of Riverside Ranch appeared in the distance, warm and welcoming in the winter night. Look, Cole said, pointing ahead, home. As they approached, Rebecca saw that the house was illuminated with lanterns, and a wreath of evergreen hung on the door. Rose and Miguel had gone ahead to prepare the house for their arrival, a final wedding gift before departing to spend the night with relatives in town, leaving the newlyweds to their privacy. Cole drew the sleigh to a halt before the front porch, then turned to Rebecca with a mischievous smile. Tradition demands I carry my bride across the threshold. Before she could respond, he had swept her into his arms and out of the sleigh, mounting the steps with ease despite her skirts and the furs. Welcome home, Mrs. O'Malley, he said, pushing the door open and carrying her inside. The main room was transformed by lamplight and greenery, a fire crackling welcomingly in the hearth. On the table stood a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses, clearly another of Rosa's thoughtful preparations. Cole set Rebecca gently on her feet but kept his arms around her. I still can't quite believe you're really my wife, he admitted, his voice husky with emotion. Rebecca reached up to trace the line of his jaw, still marveling that this good man was now her husband. Believe it, she whispered. I'm yours and you're mine, and this is only the beginning. His kiss was different now, deeper, more possessive, yet still infinitely tender. Rebecca responded with all the love in her heart, knowing that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together. Later, much later, as they lay entwined in the bedroom that was now truly theirs to share, Rebecca gazed at the moonlight filtering through the window and thought about the strange, winding path that had brought her here. Had the stagecoach never been robbed, had she never fled in panic into the desert, had Cole not found her when he did, how different her life might have been. What are you thinking about so seriously? Cole murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. How fortunate I am, Rebecca replied, shifting to look into his eyes. Most people who get lost in the desert don't find their way home. I got lost and found home. Cole's smile was tender as he gathered her closer. And I found the other half of my heart, wandering where she didn't belong. Or perhaps, Rebecca suggested, resting her head on his chest where she could hear the steady beating of his heart. Exactly where I was always meant to be. Outside, the vast Arizona sky stretched endlessly above their small, warm haven. The horizon, once so distant and intimidating when Rebecca had staggered, lost and alone beneath its vastness, now embraced them both, a boundary not of limitation, but of possibility, the edge of a shared future stretching out before them like the promising dawn of a new day.